Okay, so as you can see, this is the home screen for the actual California Small Agricultural Business Drought and Flood Relief Grant Program. This is the website that you would go to not only get briefed on what the groups are in terms of drought and also flood, all the uh, eligible requirements and things of that nature, your required docs that you're going to need, but you can get more information as well. Before I get started into the presentation, I just want to highlight this feature here that we have on the front page, which is our dedicated team to answer any questions that you may have for drought or the flood program. Um, this is not a bot system. This is actual live people. So we have a dedicated team that's available for your chat back and forth if you have any questions of that nature. Um, Also here on the home screen, you'll see that we also have some FAQs. So we encourage you to go to that tab and look at some of the frequently asked questions that could also give you a little bit more insight um, on questions that others might have had and what the answers are to those questions. We also have um, in different languages here for the website, if you require that, some different languages. And you can see here what those languages are. Um, I just want you to keep in mind that you can actually go and look at this website in these languages, but when it comes to filling out the application itself, that needs to be filled out in English. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I'm sorry. Um, and then also, you'll see in a few minutes also that we have for the application guide and things of that nature, we have that in about 16 different languages. But we'll get to that in a minute. Um, but you can see here that we have the home tab, which is the screen that we're on now. We have a drought tab, flood. We also have a tab for webinars. So if there's another webinar that you'd like to register for and look at a future date, feel free to do so. You can register for that and come to the other webinar. We as Lendistry, we administer two webinars ourselves. They're Lendistry-led webinars, and those are on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. Every week, every Tuesday and Thursday. So feel free to come to those as well, or look up that webinar and you can come to our webinar that we administer. All right. And then last, tips for applying. I'll be going over that a little bit later on as well in the application guide that I'll go into. And we'll also talk about the review process in that guide as well. All right. So just wanted to go down and highlight a little bit about the program and the overview of the program. We're going to look at both the drought group 1 and 2 and 3 for that matter, and then also the flood group 1. Okay. Um, Basically, the program overview is that where this program was designed to um, help those businesses, those agricultural businesses that have experienced a decline. So um, this is what this program has been designed for. We have partnered with Cal OSPA in order to do that. These drought tabs here, the drought relief tab, and also the storm flood relief. These are the same as these two tabs up here. So if you were to click on either one of these, it will take you to the same thing as the two drought and flood tabs at the top. All right, and we'll go into one of those in a little bit later. All right. All right. So I wanted to go over and just talk about a little bit more about each of the groups so you can get a little bit more of a description of what those are and what they mean. Group 1 is basically for our small farms and also our socially disadvantaged farmers as well. You'll see a little bit more of a description of what those are, what we consider a small farm and also a socially disadvantaged farmer when I go into the application guide, and we'll be able to see that in a minute. All right. And actually, it's not in the application guide. It's actually a little bit further down in the group breakdowns. All right. But again, this is to aid those who have experienced a decline in their annual gross receipts or gross profits of 10% or more. You'll find that this is the only group that has 10% or more. Group 2 will be 30% or more, but we'll get into that in a second. And the way that we determine that is we compare the 2022 tax year to your 2019 taxable year as well. All right. And you have to have been affected by the drought and have to be clarified or classified, should I say, as a D2 or higher in our drought classification pursuant to the USDA drought monitor. All right. And we'll look at the drought monitor in a little bit as well, because I'm going to show you a map how you can put in your address, and it'll determine whether or not, by drilling down to that address that you provide, whether or not you fall into that area that was considered drought affected or flood, for that matter. All right. And then also drought group two. Also experienced a decline in annual gross receipts or profits, but this change is 30% or more. So it has to be at least 30% decline in your annual gross receipts or profits um, for the comparable years of 2020 and 2019. So again, one of the required docs that you'll be uploading are your 2022 and 2019 documents, and we'll compare those to see what loss percentage that you encountered. All right. And again, you have to be D2 or higher in your classification. And this group, which is for all ag businesses, um, um, it has to be allocated towards, you have to be under a NAICS code. So whatever your NAICS code is, this is NAICS code driven. Unlike group one is just as long as you're considered a small business or a socially disadvantaged business, you can qualify. But for group two, you have to fall under a NAICS code or an NTEE code if you are a nonprofit. And we'll go over that a little bit more also, and I'll show you some examples of those NAICS codes and also the NTEE codes. Group three are for our late filers. There are some people who have not filed their taxes yet. Some have a request to delay their filings until, I believe it's October 15th, so in a couple of days. So there may be some filers that will apply after the 15th. But group three is not going to actually get started until next year in 2024. Okay, so that's what that's going to be for, because there are some people that actually are not going to file their taxes until the following year. So that's what group three is for. So that's not going to be active as of yet. That's not coming out until 2024. And then last but not least, we'll go on to flood. So the flood storm group one, this is going to be allocated to those businesses who were affected by the storm flooding within a severe county. We look at your address and the county that you live in. And if in that area there was a declaration of a disaster for flood, then you'll qualify for the flood group as well. And while I'm thinking about it, you can actually apply for, if you qualify for both drought and flood simultaneously. You can actually fill out an application for both the drought group one or two and the flood group one at the same time. So if you find that you qualify for both of those and your business was affected by the drought disaster and also the flood disaster, we encourage you to fill out both of those applications at the same time and submit those so you can have those in the process. Okay. And the flood group is also NAICS driven as well. So you'll see the codes that are listed once I go into the application guide, and you'll be able to see that a little bit more as well. All right. Here's another tab at the bottom, similar to the one at the top that I showed you in terms of signing up for or registering for any upcoming webinars. And here is our Customer Experience Center information. This is our 888 number. We are open Monday through Friday, so we're closed on the weekends. And we're open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Now, we're closed on all federal holidays, and the industry is also closed on the day after Thanksgiving. All right. Okay, so now let's go directly into drought and talk about that a little bit more. Again, we encourage you before applying to make sure that you're aware of what all the eligible requirements are. You've taken a look at what your ineligible requirements are, what your required documents are. So we encourage you to look at all this information first before going forward with applying for this program. All right. And some of the eligible requirements I'd like to go over here, outside of what a qualified small business means. If you fall into these categories here, this is what we mean by qualified small businesses. Okay. Now, one, you have to be either a sole proprietor, an independent contractor, a C Corp, S Corp, cooperative, any LLCs, partnerships, and you can be any nonprofit other than a 501c4. So 501c4 is the only nonprofit organization or classification that does not qualify for this program. All right. We also accept any limited partnerships, and you must be domiciled in the state of California with 100 or fewer less employees. Okay, so you can have 100 or fewer full-time employees in the taxable year of 2022. All right, or you will have 100 or fewer full-time employees in the 2023 taxable year if you have not filed your taxes yet. All right, we also consider seasonal employees as full-time employment. All right. So we will include that in your full-time employment count when we look at your W-3 or your payroll records, which are two forms of required docs that we will require you to upload. Number two, we already talked about the 100 or fewer employees. You also are aware that you have to be domiciled in the state of California, your business that is. Your business also has to have been operating and started operating prior to January 1st of 2020. Okay. So as long as your business started prior to January 1st of 2020, then you can qualify for this program. You also have to currently be active and operating uh, upon applying for this program. You again have to have been affected by a D2 or higher classification for a drought. And then we also, again, are providing, you are providing your original documents, including your federal tax return or IRS Forms 990s if you are not a nonprofit. And we want a copy of the filings with the Secretary of State here in the state of California or with your local municipality. So if you have any certificates, permits, things of that nature, or any government issued business licenses, this is what we're looking for. Not limited to or including, your articles of incorporation and your certificate of organization and your fictitious business names. This is the drought map that I was referring to earlier, where you could put in an address and it will drill down. For the sake of just the illustration here, I'm going to put in an address and let's just put in 777 and see what comes up. We can go to Anaheim Convention Center. It'll drill down to that area. And as you can see, based on the address that was submitted, it says based on the address you've entered, this is the highest drought classification between January of 2019 and December of 2022 that you may be eligible for. So as you can see, this is a D2 classification. So if you remember, it has to be D2 or higher. Some areas are D3, some are D4, and then some are less than D2. But as long as you're D2 or higher, you qualify, okay? So that's the way to determine whether or not that business does qualify as a D2 or higher, or if they're in a drought designated area, a classified area. All right, as I mentioned before, group one is primarily for small and socially disadvantaged farmers. You can see here, there's a little bit more of a description in terms of what a socially disadvantaged farmer is and also what a small farm is. And I'm not going to go line by line just for the sake of time and also for the respect of your time. But I do encourage you guys to go back over some of these things here that are on the website. Okay. A qualified small business and nonprofit organization is defined here. You have to be an owner that is 18 years or older in order to apply for this. You have to, again, have experienced a decline in your annual gross receipts or profits of 10% or more. And this is for group one. Again, we're going to compare your 2022 and 2019 taxable years. You had at least $1,000 in revenue, but less than 350,000. Okay. So I want you to keep in mind, this is different from group two. Group two, you'll see that there's a different revenue cap there, or there is no revenue cap, should I say, for group two when it comes to the 350,000. And then flood, it has a little bit different parameters as well, but we'll go over that in a minute. But just keep in mind that for group one, you have to have made at least $1,000 in your gross cash farm income, and it has to be less than $350,000. And what we're looking at is your 2019 tax returns and your line 9 of your 2019 taxes on your Schedule 4, or Schedule F, should I say, in your Form 1040. And again, it says had less than $350,000 in 2022. And again, we're looking at line 9. Here is an example or illustration of what is included in your gross cash farm income. We got that from this website here from the topology. And let me jump over to that real quick and I can show you what that looks like. This is an article here of the topology. This is where we got some of our information from and how we educated ourselves on some of the agricultural terminology. So this is what you'll see if you click on to that link that is provided. All right. Okay. So again, if you identify as a group whose member have been subjected to racial, ethnic, or gender prejudice because of your identity as a member of a group, without regard to their individual qualities, this is what we're looking for in terms of what the qualified groups are for small farm and also socially disadvantaged farmers. The breakdown of the grant awards are as follows. If you are found to have fallen in between 10% loss to 29% loss, your award amount would be $20,000. If it's in between 30 and 39%, $60,000 would be your award. In between 40 to 49% is 80,000, and anything 50% or more, you can qualify for up to $100,000. All right. And again, this is for group 1. All right. Again, we have an apply button here, but we also would like for you to make sure you know what those required docs are and to have those prepared prior to applying for that. So let me go over a few of the required docs here. The first and foremost thing that is very important is that you fill out your application certifications. Okay, this is where you're going to certify that everything is true and correct. You'll sign and date. We ask that before you actually submit your document, that you download your application certification. If you did that online, it actually will not populate once you try to upload that or save it. So we ask that you download it to your computer, save it, fill it out, and then once you are able to or ready to fill out your application and upload your documents, you'd be able to browse and get that document that is saved to your computer that is filled out correctly and completely and uploaded at that time. And we have tabs down here for the application search for both a for-profit and also a nonprofit entity. So depending on what your business is, those are the 2 tabs that you would actually download that certification document. Okay. We also are going to have you to upload your government issued photo identification. And that upload is verified by Persona. So we use that third party verification in order to make sure that you are who you say you are. As Sophia said earlier, we try to mitigate fraud as much as possible. It is rampant out there. So you'd be surprised how many applications we come across that are not true and correct. And people are trying to gain access to monies that they don't qualify for. So this is why we use this persona, and we'll go over that a little bit later also to show you what that looks like if you haven't seen that before. We also, again, are going to be asking for your official filings with the California Secretary of State. We need your proof of tax exemption if you're a nonprofit. We also require your 2019 and 22 tax reforms, tax returns, okay, or your IRS 990 if you're a nonprofit. We ask that when you upload these documents, not only are they completed, but they're also unaltered and filed with the IRS. Okay, so we need those 3 things. First of all, when we mean completed, we mean if you have 30 pages of tax returns, we need all 30 pages to be uploaded. And we need those uploaded in PDF form. All right, so all forms have to be uploaded to our server in a PDF form and unaltered. So no redactions, things of that nature. We don't want anything crossed out. We want to be able to see that your taxes are in order. Okay. We also need your proof of employee count. So we look at that by either your 2022 IRS form for W-3, or we can look at your payroll records that you file as well. Now, these are the only forms that we do um, give an okay to be redacted, because we don't necessarily need the personal information in terms of social security numbers, addresses, things of that nature. So when you're uploading your W-3 or your payroll records and there is personal information on those are the two documents that you feel free to redact their social security numbers or their addresses and things of that nature, meaning personal information. All right. We also have some ineligible businesses. So this will let you know by going over these. And again, for the sake of time, we're not going to go over each one of them. But I trust that you'll go back and look at what we consider ineligible businesses for this program. Okay. And again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go over each one, but I do want to highlight this particular one in terms of an owner who has 10% of equity in a business or more. Um, this illustrates and talks about if there's any owner within the past 3 years that has been convicted of a civil judgment or even indicted, currently indicted for a civil judgment, that will disqualify the applicant or that business for applying for this actual program for this grant. Okay. So again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go over each line, but I trust that you'll go back and take a look at these things. But just keep in mind that if there is a owner of 10% or more in the business or has equity of interest in the business that has been either convicted or is currently indicted, um, you won't be qualified to fill out for this grant opportunity. We also have some eligible use of funds. These are the eligible use of funds that are illustrated here that we look forward to you using those grant monies for in order to recover. Um, and we encourage you to do so. Some people have asked before, and it's one of the frequently asked questions in terms of if we do an audit based on the funds and what they were used for. We as Lendistry, we don't do that, but we encourage you to still keep all of your paperwork in order, just in case there is an entity or a department that is going to look into that at a later date. So we encourage you to do that. All right. So please go back and look at and make sure that you're very well versed with what those ineligible businesses are and also what the eligible use of funds are. All right, so we've come down to the tabs that I spoke of earlier for the program and application guides. Here are the 16 tabs that I referred to. These are all the different languages that you can go into to look at that application guide in that language. And again, keep in mind that when you're filling out the application itself has to be filled out in English. Okay, so if you need assistance or help with that, then there's an SBDC or some a partner that can help you to fill that application out at that time. All right. So before I go into the application guide, I want to go back up and I want to go into group 2 and talk about that. All right. So this was group 1 that we just went over. So this is the group 2 application process and eligible requirements, which are pretty much the same outside of the 30% or more that you have to be qualified for as far as your decline in gross receipts and profits. So keep in mind, group 1 is 10% or more, but group 2 is 30% or more. All right. And this is NAICS code driven, like I mentioned earlier. Here are some examples of some of those NAICS codes that we look at and which ones we deem are eligible for this program. Now, if you have a NAICS code that begins with any 4 of these, any numbers that come after the fact is fine. You'll qualify for that as long as it begins with these 4. All right. We also have some specific NAICS codes here that we look at that would qualify you for this grant opportunity. Here are also some of the NTEE codes that we talked about earlier if you're a nonprofit. And there are NAICS codes and NTEE codes and some other eligible requirements and things of that nature that could be added. This is the fluid program. It's not too fluid, but there are times that some things are considered that wasn't considered previously that we've added later. So we encourage you to go back and also just keep, abreast of this website. Some things can change, and you can see that maybe right now my NTE code or my NAICS code is not here, but maybe you'll find that it may be there a little later on. But we'll make sure to be um, um, cognizant of making sure that all of our partners know so they can get that information out, and you'll be aware of that NAICS codes that are being added to this program. All right. So again, for the grant awards, for the 30% or more, so if you fall between 30% and 39%, 60,000 is your grant award. Again, between 40 and 49% is the 80,000, and anything 50% or more is 100,000. The only box that you'll not recognize here that's different between Group One and Group Two is that there is no $20,000 um, grant award amount. Okay, so that's the only difference. It starts at 60,000, but the percentage is the same between starting at 30% or more. All right. Again, same required docs, same application certifications that we actually download, same ineligible businesses, and also eligible use of funds. All right. Okay. And again, Group Three is coming in 2024 next year. So now we're going to go to drought. I mean, sorry, flood. And by the way, I meant to mention this before. If you have any questions as we go along or as we're going through this program, this webinar, feel free to put those in the chat. Um, we do have our lead relationship manager, Tina Pelzer, who's here on the call. I also have some other colleagues that are relationship managers here as well, so they'll be able to answer any questions that you may have as we go along. And then I'll make sure to check in to see if we have any questions at the end of the presentation as well. But if you have anything as we're going along that you're thinking of right now, feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat, and they will address those as we go along. All right. All right. So the eligible requirements for flood differ just a little bit from the drought, and the qualified small businesses are pretty much the same. That there's no change there. You also have to be domiciled in California, 100 or fewer or less employees. Seasonal employees are included as full-time employees. Um, Prior to January 1st of 2020, the same as drought, and also currently active and operating. The only difference is, again, you have to be in a storm, flood, or a severe county that was considered a federal disaster and affected by that flood. We also are looking at the same documents as well in the tax returns or Form 990s, official filings with the Secretary of State, things of that nature. All right. If you noticed the difference again in drought and flood, the only thing that we're considering and looking at is your 2022 taxable year. We're not comparing your 22 and your 19. Okay. So all we ask that you upload and require you to upload your 2022 taxable year. All right. Here's again a flood map. This is where you can determine whether or not you fell into that category. As you can see, majority of the state of California was affected by flood, and this is historical. So even if right now your area is not considered a flood area, it might have been back at that time in 22. Okay, so we're looking at that. And again, you can put your county or your address. If you see at the top of the state here, there's only 5 counties that were not considered flood. So unless you're in one of those counties, then it's very well a possibility that you might not qualify. But majority of the rest of the counties here in the state of California did qualify. And again, if you put in an address, we'll put in that same address, it will drill down to your area, and it will let you know here, based on the address you've entered, you are eligible. So again, there's no comparison of of the uh, the years of 19 and 22. All we're looking at is in that year where you entered or were you in a flood area. So that's all we're looking at, and you be considered eligible by that address that I put in right there. All right, here are the next codes, and they're pretty much almost the same as, well, they're not almost, but they're the same, the first 4 anyway here. that you can start those numbers with, but anything that comes afterwards is fine. Here are also some NAICS codes that are specific, and also the TEE codes for the nonprofits. Okay, so there might be a slight verification. There might not be some of the same NAICS codes here for flood than there was for drought, but take a look at those and determine if your business does qualify. Now, this is different in terms of the grant awards. Those grant awards are based on the $20 million that was allocated towards the flood. There are two buckets of money, 75 million for drought and 20 million for flood. Okay. So if you, in fact, made less than $350,000 in 22, then $25,000 is what you would receive in grant award money. If from your taxes, we determined that you made anywhere between $350,000 and $750,000, then your grant award would be $75,000. And anything between $750,000 and $2 million would be a cap of $100,000, which would be your grant award. This does have a cap. So if you made anything over $2 million, you unfortunately would not qualify for this flood grant. All right. So there's a cap of $2 million in annual gross receipts or revenues for 2022 from your taxable year. All right. Okay. So one more time, group one, for small farmers and socially disadvantaged farmers, you have to make less than $350,000. For group two, which is for all ag businesses, there is no cap. It doesn't matter what your revenue was for those 2 years, for 19 and 22. All right. Again, the apply button, again, also the same required docs. We also are looking at, oh yeah, that's it. I mean, it is the same here as the others, but keep in mind, we're only looking at your 22 federal tax returns here, and they have to be completed, unaltered, and filed with the IRS. All right, here's your certifications, also the same in eligible businesses and eligible use of funds. And again, here are your program application guides. All right. So, okay, so now we've gone over the group flood, group 1 and 2. We've also gone over flood group 1. Now I'm going to go into the application guide and show you a little bit more of how that looks. When you click onto your preferred language preference, this is what comes up. This is as revised of 9/19 of this year. This is the program and application guide. This is what it looks like. It will talk about the important notes before you proceed. You talked about the funding for the program, things of that nature, how it's limited. You must submit your application by the earlier 30 days from the date of the application was started, things of that nature. So this program is actually, the deadline is October 31st. So you have up till the 31st of this month in order to apply. If there is going to be an extension, because we get that question as well, if there's going to be an extension, we will notify you guys and let you know that there is going to be an extension for this program. And we'll move on from there as far as that's concerned. Okay. This also gives a little bit of the information that I've gone over already as far as the drought group 1 and group 2 and group 3, also for your storm flood 1. So if you can remember, we went over this in the beginning. So some of these things I'm going to skip over just to get down to the tips for applying and showing you the persona and all that. But some of these things we've already gone over for eligible requirements. So these are the same literature that we've already talked about, the eligible use of funds, ineligible businesses. And this will just go over the group 1 information that we already had gone over before for the small farm and socially disadvantaged farmers. Gives you the decline and also with the grant awards that we talked about. Here are the required docs that we've talked about already. This is the same information for group 2. Remember, this is NAICS codes driven for group 2, and it also is 30% or more as opposed to the 10%. Also talks about the grant awards, the required docs. And here's your storm flood group one information. I like to, as you can notice, I like to present from the actual website as opposed to just um, actually presenting from this. But it's basically the same information that you see, and it's more condensed to this application guide and program guide. So for flood, here are the NAICS codes again, also the grant awards and the required docs. Gives you an illustration of how to complete your application certification. So the same that I talked to you of before, as far as downloading that form first, filling it out, saving it to your computer, and then uploading it later as you're going through the application process. It gives you an illustration of how to do that electronically. It also gives you an illustration of how to do that manually. Okay, so we try to make this as easy as possible. Here are some of the tips for applying to make this process and streamline this a little bit easier for you. Um, in order to streamline that and what's compatible and optimal to our program, we like to have you use Google Chrome if you have that accessible to you. Um, that seems to be integrated very well with our program here at Lendistry. Um, and we ask that you clear your cache when you do that. We don't want any information that's been stored there to be, um, um, captured anytime after that. We also use incognito mode. Incognito mode is always great. Also, disable your pop-up blocker. So this will help you to have a more smooth process with our program when going through your application process. So those three things are very important. Again, we give you an illustration of how to clear your cache, also how to use incognito mode, and also how to disable your pop-up blockers. All right. I talked about earlier and mentioned that when you're uploading your paperwork or your documents, we like to have that in a PDF form. The file size must be under 15 megabytes. Try to make sure that your pages are clean as well. Nothing is folded or obstructed where we can see. We want to be able to see each line, each letter on the paper. Um, and again, make sure you're uploading all documents, especially when it comes to your tax returns. Use of email addresses. This is very important also when it comes to the integration to our system. We don't recognize anything that begins with info at. So if you have an email address that begins with info at, we ask that you maybe create a different email address to be able to use for the application process. Also, any emails that end with at contact.com or at noreply.com. This won't be recognized either. If you have already filled out an application or you started an application and you've used an address that begins with any of these things or ends with these two examples, we ask that you call into our customer experience center because you won't be able to make those changes on your own, but they'll assist you in being able to make those changes so you can have your application process. All right. As it says at the bottom here, do not submit a new application. We just want you to call in to that number and they will assist you with providing a different email address that would be acceptable. All right. Because submitting multiple applications may be detected as potential fraud, and it also disrupts the review process for your application. So it could delay that process if we have to try to sift through what the actual application is that needs to be processed. All right. And we'll talk about creating your application for the first time, and also how to access your previously um, started application as well. All right, so here's some of the practice that we use successfully to complete Persona. Again, for the sake of time, because we maybe have about 18 minutes left. I'm not going to read each line, but I am going to show you the illustrations for Persona. Again, I trust that you'll go back and look at these a little bit deeper, get more briefed on those. But this is what the process looks like once you click on to Persona. Once you click on to begin verifying, it's going to ask you what document or upload that you're going to use for your driver's license, state ID, passport, things of that nature. It'll also ask you to upload that front and back. Once you've done that, it will ask you to, and you need to use a front-facing camera. So either that can be on your phone or it can be on your computer. We want to look at your face moving forward. We also want to look left and right. So it's looking at you and scanning your face and making sure and comparing to that ID that you've uploaded that you are who you say you are. And again, this is all to mitigate fraud as much as possible. Once it's gone through successfully, you'll see this last screen where it says, congratulations, you're done, and you'll move on. The next thing you'll see is you'll see the security questions that we establish up front. So if in fact that you're trying to go into um, back into your application just to maybe check the status of things of that nature, um, and you've forgotten some information and you're prompted to ask a security question, you already have these established. Okay. And it also, again, helps to mitigate fraud from anybody else trying to get into your application as well. All right. So keep in mind that you'll be prompted those in the beginning. This is how to start your application. When you click on apply, it's actually going to take you to another page where you'll create your account. And this is what it'll look like. It'll say create a new account. And also, after you've created your account and you have an application ID number, if you want to go back at any time to look to see what your status is, you're going to sign into an existing account here on the right-hand side where it shows this. All right. So please keep in mind, again, we just want you to create a new account only one time. Once you've created that account, that information has been stored in our system. And when you want to go back and look at it, you can sign into your existing account. All right. Even if, let's say, for example, you qualify for both drought and flood. When you create a new account, you can fill out that application for the drought. When you want to go back and do an application for flood, you're going to create, you're not going to create a new account. You're going to sign into your existing account. And that's when you'll fill out the tab for flood. All right. So you won't create a new account for both. You only need one new account and you'll be able to do drought and flood from that one account. All righty. All right. So here's the application process. And this is actually talking about drought more so than flood, but we'll look at the flood. It's just going to be a little bit different when it comes to the disclosure questions. But the first thing that you're going to be filling out and giving your information is going to be on your owner information. So this is your owner officer details. It's going to ask you about yourself, your legal name, email, things of that nature, your address, your percentage of ownership, who your referral partner was. So please, whoever, if Abala is your referral partner, make sure that that's who you choose so they can get that credit. So make sure that, whoever it is that referred you and you're working with, that you illustrate who that is. All right. We're looking at your preferred number. And also, if you want to receive text messages, you can also click the box that gives us access and the okay to send you text messaging and things of that nature. So you'll check that box on the right-hand side here. But this is what the screen looks like for all that owner information. Once you completed that, the next screen would be for your business or your nonprofit. Okay. So here's all the information that is asked on that screen. All right. Also, for your business and nonprofit, we ask about annual revenue for 19 and also 22. We also ask about any jobs that have been created, jobs that were retained, if you created new jobs, things of that nature. So that's what this is for the third screen. We're also looking at demographics. We're looking at the NAICS code. We're looking at if this is a woman or veteran-owned business, disabled-owned. We're looking at the race and ethnicity. It's in a rural area, it's a franchise, things of that nature, preferred language. So all of these things, and thus far, none of these things are disqualifying questions, okay? What is and can be a disqualifying question when you're filling out your application are some of the disclosure questions, all right? And again, I just trust that you'll go back and you'll look and familiarize yourself with these questions, but some of these questions have to have a yes answer, all right? For example, I mentioned before that you have to be open and operating. If in fact, as of the date of this application, is your business or nonprofit organization open and operating and you put no, that can disqualify you, all right? If you have 100 or more, if you have 101 or more employees, if you put a number like that or more, it's going to disqualify you. So these are disqualifying questions that are here in the disclosure questions. So make sure you're looking at these questions carefully. You're answering those things truthfully. I mean, if the answer is no, then it is no, and unfortunately, you don't qualify for the business. But you'll know that prior to just by going through the application guide and knowing what those eligible requirements are. All right. But these are the questions that are going to be on the disclosure form, and we just ask that you answer those things true and correct, and you can move forward. Here's where you're going to do the persona that we talked about earlier. This is where the verification process starts. Here is the document for the upload for your docs. So each one of these is where you're going to upload those documents. The first is your app certs, your application certifications. The next one is your proof of business organization. So that's where you do your organization, articles of incorporation, things of that nature, your permits or certificates that you may have for the business. The next thing is going to be your tax return, your tax exempt for your nonprofit. Next is going to be your 2019 and 22 taxes. The next one is also the W-3 or the payroll records that we require. And the last is your tax returns. What is that? Your tax revenues? I'm sorry, I can't see what that is at the bottom. But again, when you're going through that, this is where, and somebody can chime in. Tina, what is that at the bottom? I can't see it. Oh, that's the 990. I'm sorry.
That's the 990 if they do a 990 for nonprofit.
Correct. Thank you very much. Now I see that number. I don't have my glasses on. Thank you. All right. There's one more third-party verification technology system that we use, and that is to verify your banking. You do have to have a business bank account in order for us to deposit the monies into your account once you have been processed and deemed eligible for receiving those funds. So before your money is submitted into your bank account, you receive your closing docs, you fill all those things out, and this would have already been verified that you have a bank account through Plaid. So if you've used Plaid before, you know how secure it is, and this is what we use to verify your banking. And here's all the steps here that we use, the illustration anyway, of what that process looks like when you're uploading your credentials and things of that nature. And then also confirming your permission for us to take a look at those things and verify your banking information. All right. Yeah,
Alan, can I interject just a bit here?
sure. Go ahead.
For the bank account, it does not have to be a business bank account. It can, if you have your own bank account and you're doing a DBA with your business, with your bank account, that's fine. So as long as you have a valid bank account, just wanted to clarify, it's not specifically a business one.
Okay. And thank you very much for clarifying that. I think I'm so used to saying that from other programs that it had to be a business bank account that I'm used to saying that in my presentation. But thanks for that clarification. And yes, for those sole props and things of that nature. So um, definitely makes sense. All right. So the application before submission, once you've gone through the whole process of going through each step, it's going to give you an opportunity to make any corrections or changes that you need to make by making edits. So it's going to show you what you filled out, what information you provided. And if you see on that page that, oh, I made a mistake, I need to go back, you can click, I have some edits, and it'll take you back to that page. Okay. If you realize that, you know what, there's some documents that I didn't have prepared, or you know what, I forgot to put this in a PDF form, or whatever it is that you recognize that you're not ready to click submit, you can also save and come back later. Okay. So those are options that you'll have before clicking submit. But if you feel like everything is uploaded correctly, I've submitted all my information, I'm ready to move forward and submit this over, click submit application, and that process will go through and it'll let you know and give you this email is what you'll receive. You'll see the page that'll say your application has been submitted. And that way you'll know once you've clicked submit that it has been submitted. If for whatever reason you have said yes to a no answer on the disclosure form, then it'll also let you know that based on your information that you provided, you unfortunately do not qualify. You'll get that as well. It'll let you know that also, and you'll receive an email from us illustrating the same. But this is the email that you'll receive from Lendistry saying your application has been submitted, and that's it. It's actually actual, going through the process of being verified um, through both the processing department and underwriting. Okay. All right. And again, it's going to give you that process for group two. Same thing here, all the pages. The only difference is again, the disclosure questions may vary based on the program from drought and also flood. So flood is going to be where those disclosure questions are going to be a little bit different. So make sure that you are reading these things carefully and correct and answering those things in a truthful form. All right. Okay, so I just wanted to give you and kind of scroll over and show you that this is all pretty much the same, just based on um, the identity of the actual group of the program based on drought or flood. There may be small similar differences, but other than that, everything is pretty much the same. Now, the review process. You have the ability to, if you in fact get a disqualification letter or email from us, you have 5 days in order to send in a rebuttal. So make sure that within those 5 days of receiving that you go back and contact either the Customer Experience Center um, or just give us a call and let us know that I think there may be some things that were incorrect and I don't agree with the disqualification and this is why. Give us what that information is, and we will go over that and give you an opportunity to have that the opportunity to say why you feel like you do qualify for the program. But make sure you do that within the 5 days of receiving that letter or that email, and we'll go for it from there. Okay. But that part of that review process, excuse me, is the application status. So when you're going back into your existing account, you can look to see what your current status is. It's either going to be categorized as some of these things here: incomplete, inactive, application submitted. It's going to go all the way down to grant funded if you get all the way through that process. But it'll give you not only what your status is of your application, but it'll tell you what it means. And it also gives you any action that's required by you in order to correct that or to clarify anything that may be stopping you from that process either being looked at or qualified. So make sure that you're looking at your application status and keeping in touch of what the process and the steps that it's going through. Make sure you're also staying abreast on your emails from the industry as well, because we may have to reach out to you for a little bit more clarification or need a little bit additional information, and we want that opportunity to do so. All right. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of the presentation. Um, I trust that if there was any questions or things of that nature that was probably have been asked and answered already. Um, do we have anything in the chat that we need to go over or anything that we need to address?
Thanks, Alan, so much. There were a couple questions that came in the chat. I'm quite sure everyone sees them, but we'll say them out loud. Is the grant first come, first serve? And yes, it is. The program is open from now until October 31st. There may be an extension, but we can't guarantee that. So please do get your applications in and submit it completely. And then there was another question about the being taxed for the grant at the end of the year. Every award recipient will receive a 1099 for the monies received from this program, and you will need to use that for your tax returns. But we advise seeking a tax accountant for any further information related to how you would apply this to your tax returns. Those are the only questions, Alan. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tina. All right, and if for whatever reason there's any questions that you may have after the fact, feel free to get in contact with Abala, or you can reach out to Lendistry to ask any questions that you may have. Again, that chat feature that we have with the live agents would be a great tool to use in order to ask those questions as well. But Abala and Dennis and you know the crew over there, they are wonderful and always professional. So we again enjoy working with you guys. Thank you so much again, Sophia and V, for allowing me to be a part of this webinar and present today. And always thankful for Tina and the team for assisting me with the questions and things of that nature as well. So I'll give it back to you, Sophia, and I hope this was satisfactory.
Hi, Sophia and Alan. Can I just make one last note for those that are left? Please, and I know Alan said this in a little while ago, but please do first reach out to Abala. They're your first line of approach to support with this application. They are our trusted, amazing partners that we really depend on for this program. The other thing is, please apply for both flood and drought if you do qualify. You can apply for both programs. We're seeing that some people are applying for one over the other. You can apply for and get funded for both programs if you qualify. So please check it out, see if you qualify and apply for both and get your applications fully submitted. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina and Ellen. Thank you everyone for joining this webinar, and please email us if you have any questions about this grant at support@abala.org. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.